Thanks for joining us with the Bloodhound Pix podcast. Um, I am one of your hosts, Craig.
And this is Josh.
And this is Kyle.
Thanks for joining us. We're going to do, on top of all of our stuff, we want to bring you kind of a new segment that we're testing out. And this is about movies that two of us have recommended to one of the group members here. And that person finally checked this movie out. And so there is an ongoing joke since we since we all met each other, of why Kyle has not seen the movie Baskin. And and this has gone on for, I'd say, a little over 2 years. And we're kind of proud to, maybe Kyle can add in the audio, add in a round of applause, special effect thing. We're proud of Kyle to have watched Baskin, and he can get to give us a little bit on it and talk about his experience and the synopsis and everything like that.
So you, like us, can verbally berate Kyle for not watching Baskin sooner than yesterday or whenever it was.
Yes, please do that on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, social media. Yes, I finally watched Baskin. These guys have been yelling at me about Baskin for like 2 years, and I was like, yeah, whatever. And then I watched it, and then there's that part at the end, which I'm not going to give away, but you guys know the ending, and I was like, holy shit, that was exactly what I imagined pretty much for the ending of the one script I was writing at that time. No shit. That's why they wanted me to watch it. And also, kind of glad I didn't, because it probably would have been pretty disheartening. I would have been like, oh, fuck, throw this script away. So it's a Turkish film, right? Okay. And basically it's about these 4 cops who end up getting a call to like an abandoned police station, which kind of looks like a house in this sketchy neighborhood. It takes its time getting to that point, but that's like the plot of it, basically. But it's super trippy, pretty gross, pretty weird. A lot of character stuff that I think is well done, like these kind of sleazy cops. But I fucking loved it. I was like, I felt bad now after these 2 years because I watched that and I was like, I love it. I want to like buy a poster and put it on my wall right now. Like a lot more than I've loved certain films maybe in a while. And Craig was telling me how gross it was. And not spoiler alert, I don't know, whatever alert. I've been doing the Fulci-thon, as I'm calling it, and just watching a shitload of Lucio Fulci, which is obviously super gross stuff, like the grossest stuff you can get. So I watched Baskin, and I was just like, this is beautiful. I thought it was marvelous. I didn't really think it was gross, but yeah, dude, I loved it. I thought it was just so well done. Clearly, like on a low budget too, obviously, but just like the lighting and all the special effects towards the end were super well done, and they knew like kind of when to cut away and when to use the effects, and that guy that there's an actor that comes in that's essentially the Freddy Krueger of the piece, to say it lightly, who is amazing, who is like this, he's not like a dwarf, but he has some kind of condition where he's like a smaller person, but he was super good, super creepy. So yeah, thanks for recommending Baskin.
Also, what I think I enjoyed too about Baskin, and that in a lot of our reviews, this kind of will pop up occasionally, is that there's a ton of movies now that go really dark in terms of not the content, but in terms of lighting. That way you can get away with, some budgetary issues or the special. Where I felt like with Baskin, there's elements that are dark, but yet it's still, it works where it shows you, where you still see everything. And yeah, for people that have not watched it, it's probably not a good beginning horror person movie. there's a lot of sexual content and not like and I guess gross sexual content, not necessarily made to look pretty in a way. And then it has one of the probably most memorable opening conversations that I think I can recall in some time, and it's just these cops talking about, which since it's the opening, it's not a spoiler, I don't think, but it's cops talking about having sex with a goat, and they're joking around about it, and it's in very seriousness that it's just what they did. And so that's the start of it. And then from there on, you get to see everything else in all of its glory.
And it's a great start. I mean, despite the graphic content of what they're talking about, you can tell pretty much that you're in good hands. Like, it's well written. These are interesting characters. Like, it's well shot. You're like, all right, I'm in to see where this goes.
It's funny too. Like, I think we brought this up when we were talking about when we had I Saw the Devil, in that that film is so product of where it was made, and we touched on remaking that movie and just how it wouldn't work. And with Baskin, I was like, I wonder when that's going to get remade, except for it's way too fucking weird to ever get any kind of remake. There's just no way. Even though obviously it's a Turkish movie, that would be something that, had it not been so good and so weird, it would have been remade by now.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's definitely one of those films too where like that conversation I feel like works because it's a Turkish film and because it's a foreign culture, and like there's different stuff going on that definitely wouldn't work. And if you Americanized it, you would have to change all that. Also, I would definitely say, speaking of our last, well, not our last episode, but our best of episode, this definitely would have made my best of the decade, probably.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was like, I don't know how I didn't remember that, because it should be on mine without question.
No, same here. I think, all of us are in agreement that very place at our best of decade, but we kind of forgot about it, unfortunately. It is interesting because being a Turkish film and all the nuances that we talk about, an American remake would be able to do it. The issues in the translation process of that kind of stuff. But his most recent movie was called Housewife, and that was, it was I believe British made, but it was made to be an American film. And I will admit, I'm not sure if Kyle has seen it yet. I know Josh has, but for me, there was some stuff that, what we were talking about, where it just didn't translate. That style that you see in Baskin didn't translate as well, in my opinion, in Housewife.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but obviously I've heard it may not be as good.
It's good. It's very good. It's just not Baskin. But then again, what the fuck is?
Nothing that I know of. Also, speaking of Lucio Fulci, I did not miss the fact that the dude gets his eye gouged out in Baskin, and I was like, yep, I know where that came from.
Fulci hates eyes.
I think he loves them, man. I was just watching Manhattan Baby, which was not that good, but there's just so many eyes. The guy goes blind. There's just so many close-ups of eyes. I'm like, holy shit, eyes are really important here. There's an amulet that is like an eye. I was like, okay, I think I get it.
So if I think that our little segment, have any your thoughts on Baskin, or if listening to this has inspired you to watch it and you get your some thoughts after that, feel free to send us what you thought of the movie. And we have some other stuff. Kyle still needs to watch The Witch and the Vomit.
Yeah.
Also,
I was going to say, if anyone wants to recommend movies for me to watch 2 years from now, I'm taking recommendations.
Thanks for listening. This is our segment, Only a Mother Could Love, where we kind of look at movies that that both fans and critics have panned over the years, and we try and find ways to defend them and talk about them and highlight them in their own way. And this episode, we are talking about not one but two movies, Waxworks and Waxworks 2. So, since this was Kyle's pick, I'm going to have him start off, and hope you enjoy listening to it.
Here we go. So I guess we should give a brief synopsis, but we don't need to go too long into it. But Waxworks, basically, these kids, there's a Waxworks in their neighborhood, which, what the fuck is it doing in anyone's neighborhood? Which is kind of addressed at least, but there's a wax museum, and essentially the wax figures are of the, 18 worst people in the world or something, the most evil people, and they're getting people to go in these, in the wax exhibits. They'll get sucked into kind of another world, and they'll get killed, and once all 18 claim a victim, I think it is, they'll take over the world or whatever. But notably, it's got Zach Galligan from Gremlins fame, which is really, I don't know, probably the only draw, honestly, that you're like, oh, I'll watch this movie because Zach Galligan. And the second one, should I even get into that? Maybe we'll talk about the first one first and then move on.
Yeah, let's talk about Waxworks 1 first.
Yeah. So, anyways, so I think that's why me and one of my friends had this movie, I guess, it must have been on VHS. So I watched this movie so many fucking times when I was a kid. It's not a great movie, but it's kind of amazing how it manages to be it's like an anthology movie, but not an anthology movie. Because it's got all the wax exhibits are, like Dracula, the Mummy, the Thing, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Phantom of the Opera. They kind of use it as a way to reference other films, which is the coolest part of the movie. And then the rest is a lot of 80s cheesy shit. And then David Warner is good, but you're also like, what the... I don't know. I love this movie irrationally. It's not a great movie, but there are so many quotable lines. I put this on probably a week ago, and there's still just a ton of lines that I love that make no sense. Specifically, fucking Zach Galligan at the beginning with his mom at the fancy rich dinner table, and he's like, "Mom, I need my caffeine." Doesn't make any fucking sense, really. It's just hilarious. I'm gonna open it up after that. On that
note. So for me, I watched it when I was younger, and thought it was okay, and then I ended up getting it fairly not recently, but within the last few years. And it is one that I've kind of either rented, or now that I own it, I'll return to it probably once a year, I'd say. I don't know why. And each time I watch it, I think I lose some of the enjoyment I had with it. I don't know, in a weird way. But I will admit, it's one of those things where I like the anthology part where they're going in there and they're, you're seeing one of the characters go into a werewolf scenario and stuff and so on and so forth. All of that stuff I think is great, and I almost want to see more of it. I know there was some long period of time in my life where I was like, oh, well, all these movies are being made into series. What they should do is make Waxworks and just make it kind of this anthology, and then have this little arc throughout. However, but yeah, I'll go with it. that like once it gets to the, I guess the main plot, if you call it, it is a lot of it doesn't make sense, or it is kind of weird. And Zach Galligan is kind of a, to put it lightly, a pompous rich dickhead most of it, and but a lot of that, like, there's a lot of stuff that just is added that doesn't make any sense. I mean, there's the nostalgia I have for the movie, but rewatching it this time, it's like the fact that he's rich, it doesn't really matter, but they take this long kind of process in showing you that, oh, he's like this really rich guy, and but really all you're there to do is see a group of kids go into this waxworks, then see these stories unfold. And yeah, I'll let Josh talk about it, and I'll talk more after that.
Okay, thanks, Craig. I want to talk to you about Waxwork. So Kyle mentioned that, Zach Galligan being like the only draw to see this film. But I think for me, it's got Deborah Foreman from April Fool's Day as well. And it also has Dana Ashbrook from Twin Peaks. And it also has Michelle Johnson. So how in the world they got this cast to be in this movie, I don't know. And ironically, Deborah Foreman must have been too busy to be in the sequel because they recast her part for some reason. I couldn't figure out why that was.
She was dating the director for the first one, and then they broke up. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then that makes perfect sense. So yeah, and Dana Ashbrook too. It is somewhat astounding how much of a better actor he is than everyone else in the movie, Zach Galligan included. And interestingly enough, Dana Ashbrook dies first, which was the dumbest thing that they could have done, because he managed to elevate everything that he did in the movie, which seems like it would be next to impossible, because the characters, other than, we pointed out how pointless it was that we get the fact that Zach Galligan is this bourgeois douchey guy, which literally makes no sense and has nothing to do with the plot of the movie at all. And so the other characters are all just sort of like stock, I guess you could say. So yeah, Dana Ashbrook managed to be extremely funny, and he just has that really good delivery of lines where I don't know if he's trying to be funny, but it comes out that way. Or maybe he was like, I can't believe how fucking stupid the stuff I have to say is, and, who knows. But yeah, Ashbrook is great. And it is sort of like it is kind of like an all-star cast, at least, to a certain degree, and like the pedigree of what these actors have been in and what they were known for, I should say. May not appeal to everyone, but that was arguably the best thing about it. And surprisingly, I found out that this film was made in 1988, and the budget for the movie was $3.5 million. And I was just astounded at that number, because, I don't know, in 2020, that'd be at least, I would guess, a $10 million budget, which for, a little horror film, that's a shitload of money. And it went on to make $800,000 at the box office. So in box office revenue alone, it took a big steaming pile of shit. And somehow that warranted Anthony Hickox, the director of this movie, getting the opportunity to make a sequel. And we're not going to get into the sequel stuff right at the moment, but it's kind of a fascinating history. And I guess one thing, too, that I could say that was good in the movie that didn't have anything to do with the story, again, is the effects. And I think you see, that's where that money went into, because another thing that I learned is that Hickox wrote the script for Waxwork in 3 days. And you can fucking tell because it is not good. And I hadn't seen the film in a while and I forgot how bad it is. And you know, it starts out and it's kind of cool, even though it doesn't make any sense. And the anthology thing does kind of lend itself to at least being interesting, but then it just kind of like stopped doing that. And you know, another thing too that I came across was that the movie almost didn't get made because apparently executives were too worried that it was going to be too much like The Monster Squad, which was the film which came out the year before. And I'm like, you mean actually good? Because I don't really see the connection other than, you know, he obviously is in love with Frankenstein's monster and the other monsters that are in Monster Squad. But the problem is, well, I guess it's not a problem for Monster Squad. That film's good. This one's not. So I wasn't quite sure about how that was. They were thinking that it was going to be too much like Monster Squad, but it clearly was not.
But it does have the great line of the girl that goes into the ex-girlfriend, I guess, of Zach Galligan, goes into the vampire story, and she's eating the food, and she said something about, oh, it's been a while since I had beef tartare.
Steak
yes,
tartare.
Oh yeah, steak tartare.
I'll quote the lines, Craig.
And then there's this weird like scene of just them slurping up this food. This bloody. No, I mean I agree with both Josh and Cal. I think I don't know, just going back for this, the anthology is kind of where it lies, and you almost want more of that the whole time. I mean, I know you can't necessarily do this because it would be a very long movie, but there was so much of me where, like, even the same with how I felt and how other people, when I've talked to them about that movie, Cabin in the Woods, where it's like when you see all the other exhibits or all the other types of monsters, you're like, man, I'd really like to see how that one played out. And that's what, every time I watch Waxwork, that's how I feel about it. I just kind of wish I was able to see more of them.
I agree. I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, it's kind of one of those ones. I mean, that's what's fun to me about it. Like, those sequences are the funnest part. And even within them, they're like uneven. But like the Dracula one, when she actually goes to the basement and finds her fiance with his leg getting chewed on by a rat, and like the action kicks in, it's fucking pretty awesome. It's not great filmmaking. It's fun B-movie ridiculous shit, but that's like the fun of it. And like Zach Galligan goes into one and it's basically Night of the Living Dead. But like Craig said, I mean, you know, you're more interested in those possibilities. We also, I have to say, Craig was talking about the werewolf one. You also have fucking John Rhys-Davies as the werewolf, which you're like, how the fuck did they get him too? And you're like, I want to see him now. I want to see just him play the fucking Wolfman. You should have made that movie. I don't know why that's not happened, but yeah, I mean, it's a ridiculous fucking movie. I think it's fun if you turn your brain off. I mean, it's like a perfect movie to put on as a background and laugh at the shitty stuff, enjoy whatever you actually enjoy out of it, but you don't even really need to pay attention to it because, you know, it's all over the place. As for the budget, as Josh was saying, I was going to say, I mean, for a low budget movie, that's still a low budget movie at that time. It's like they do make that whole Waxworks with so many things in it. It's pretty ambitious, and I'm sure it cost a lot of money for that. I did see some behind the scenes shit that's on YouTube that I had never seen before. And I guess like the whole battle scene at the end, they only had a day to shoot all that somehow, which is insane. There's like so many extras. That's also the amazing part compared to like movies today that are low budget, is like, I miss the 80s when you did a low budget movie like that and they got all these extras and like, you know what I mean? Like it looks like a bigger movie. Now it's just we're going to make a movie in someone's closet because that's all we can afford. We cannot get people to come hang out for free.
Well, that's what we can link it in on the podcast Nightmare University. I know Kyle listened to it. They talked about the micro budget thing and the idea of it, and it's Rebecca McKendry and AJ Bowen, and how in the 80s, and a little bit before that, you would have like these low or these micro budgets that would, at least they would shoot for the stars, basically. Where now the format, as Kyle was saying, was, okay, well, you get like 3 to 4 actors, one location. There's like this whole kind of outline process of this is how you make a micro budget and how to make it that works, and I just stick to that because it seems it's too much to try and accomplish something like Waxworks on that kind of budget, I guess, in today's society.
Yeah, I think it's just impossible. I don't know. Something has changed at some point. Getting money and getting people together is more difficult, I guess. I don't know. I feel like there was more I was going to say. There's just so many stupid one-liners. He does like Zach Galligan references Maurice Chevalier, who I never knew who the fuck that was till like eventually I looked it up, and it's it's like some French like the French version of like Gene Kelly or somebody, like some fucking singer. I know Gene Kelly's a dancer, but kind of an equivalent. But it's so obscure. That's like the fun of the movie to me too, is like, who the fuck wrote that? And this movie in 1988 for kids in 1988, and you're referencing this person that's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I didn't know who that was for like the next 12 years. And then I looked it up and was like, okay, still doesn't really make any fucking sense. I don't know. That's the ridiculousness of it.
Yeah, that goes back. It's got to go back to like the fact that Hickox wrote the script in 3 days. Like, well, yeah, everyone's gonna get that reference, even though nobody has any fucking clue what the hell it is. And when Galligan says that line, it's just like you're obviously supposed to know what he's talking. Like, I have no fucking idea what he's talking about. So yeah, it's boneheaded. I was gonna say too that there's a lot of bad wigs too in the movie, and they clearly did not use any of that $3.5 million budget on wigs because there's some really fucking bad ones.
Dana Ashbrook's is terrible.
Yeah. A point yes, it was, but a point I'd like to bring up too is that there is an issue with it seems like some of the people, when they get sucked into they're still themselves and they're still looking around and trying to figure out what's going on. But then some get sucked in and they become the character that they're supposed to be playing. Like, I think but then with the girl that goes into the vampire one, I don't know if it's because she gets hypnotized or what, but she almost like takes on the role, where with Dana Ashbrook, the whole time he's, his college student character that he was on the outside, saying like, well, what's going on here? And, so there's this weird thing of like continuity, I guess we'd call it. So do they kind of get hypnotized, or what's happening?
Yeah, it's just literally like the rules are not, there isn't any rules. It's like sometimes they become the characters in the exhibit, sometimes they don't. Sometimes Zach Galligan just out of nowhere realizes that if you don't believe in it, then they can't hurt you. Shit like that, where it's literally, how the fuck did you find that out? You literally just made that up, and lo and behold, it fucking works.
Yes.
Asshole.
I would say writing a script in 3 days, just again. But also, I mean, he's Zach Galligan. He fought off the Gremlins, Josh. He knows about this stuff.
That's true. And in Waxwork, he has a sword fight with Marquis de Sade, and somehow or another, he's an excellent sword fighter out of fucking nowhere in his goddamn collared shirt. Like, what the fuck? This is such bullshit.
Well, I think that's probably so that might, like, as we're talking about it more and more, linked to like him being the wealth or making sure that they point out that he's kind of this wealthy aristocrat, and because of and throwing the random references, you'd be like, okay, so obviously he would know how to sword fight because he probably, because if they just made him this normal kid, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just reading too much into it to give the movie more credit than it deserves.
Probably, yeah. I do have to point out also, Patrick McNee, his like uncle or whatever family friend he's fucking awesome in it. He's a good actor. It's totally, I mean, he just comes in as like, here's the exposition. We're fighting against evil. Whatever. I'm in a wheelchair. Whatever. He's fucking great. And he gets his head ripped off, which is awesome. And I love the fucking butler, Jenkins. Because he shows up at the battle and you find out he's part of like this secret society fighting evil, and he shows up in the sequel, and that's just funny to me. I think I love the idea that they actually thought this was going to be like a fucking franchise. You know what I mean? I love when people, like, a shitty movie is really trying to plant all these seeds, and then you're like, that's not going to pay off, buddy.
Which is why we'll move on to the second one. I'll have Kyle talk about it before we go on. For me, and so this one, if Waxworks 1 is ridiculous, Waxworks 2 goes to like a Gremlins 2 level. So we'll have Kyle talk about Waxworks 2.
Yes, what Craig said. So Waxworks 2, the sequel you never asked for, basically it picks up right where the other one ends off, with the Waxworks burning down with everyone in it. But we see that a fucking hand escapes, a disembodied zombie hand, which is obviously a total Evil Dead 2 reference, and there's a whole sequence for that, which I enjoy. It's terrible, but it's great. Anyway, so that thing escapes, kills Sarah's stepdad. I think this is the character's name, Deborah Foreman, who becomes some other actress. And so basically, to prove the most ridiculous way to prove that she's innocent and that you can actually reanimate dead flesh is to go to this other fucking world where we're fighting evil and go through all these different, go to like a medieval time period, and then go through other time periods that are just other. It makes it almost an anthology again, where you go through other films like Dawn of the Dead and Alien and The Haunting,
Godzilla,
Jack the Ripper, which, and that's the setup. I don't know. But there's still like another fucking host of great character actors, like fucking David Carradine is there. How did he get in this movie? I don't know. The villain, oh, do you know?
Yeah, so real quick, the movie that Anthony Hickox made before Waxwork 2 is this.
Yes.
So look who's on the cover of that.
Bruce Campbell is it?
Campbell and David Carradine.
Yes.
So that, my friends, is how he got both of those two to be in that unbelievably shitty sequel, Waxwork 2. And similar to Waxwork 2 in the Sundown film, which is god-awful, I will admit, Bruce Campbell is like, he's on the cover of the thing, and yet he's largely underutilized in this movie. Similarly, like with Waxwork 2. Bruce Campbell's one of the best actors that he could have gotten. He is the best actor out of both movies. And what does he do? He has him in one sequence and then fucking kills him. And again, it's just like with Dana Ashbrook. Don't you think you should have tried to convince Bruce Campbell? Maybe he said, no, I'll do that and that's it. But then, yeah, Carradine too for one scene, which is just like, really? But yeah, so I just wanted to point out that Anthony Hickox made this Sundown film in between the Waxworks, and the Sundown has Bruce Campbell and David Carradine. So clearly he convinced them. They must have had such a great time making this piece of shit that he convinced them to be in another piece of shit.
Mystery solved. Yeah, I was curious whether that movie was any good, but okay. Yeah, so obviously he called in favors with those guys. And speaking of Bruce Campbell, I think his part in this movie is the best part of maybe the whole entire movie. Because he nails the, like, ridiculous horror comedy that it seems like they're probably going for through most of it. But he knows how to fucking do it, and it is hilarious.
Yes, that's true. And so even in the beginning, where Anthony Hickox just rips off Evil Dead 2, then we get Bruce Campbell, who obviously knows that, okay, Waxwork 1 was fucking stupid, and he's like blatantly using like the rainy comedy formula in this, like he didn't do in the first movie. So yeah, of course, Bruce Campbell's the perfect person to be in this shit. And you're right, that is the best part of the movie. But then, of course, he fucking dies, and the movie just goes downhill faster than you would think possible from that point on.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can have to agree with both of them. For me, I don't know, I watched it a few months ago, Waxworks 2, and then I just rewatched it for the sake of this podcast. And I don't know why I still can't tell you. I don't know. I feel like I couldn't tell you anything that happened. Like it's one of those movies that just went by as a wave. Like it hit me and I went, okay. So that was there, and like I remember very clearly the opening, and then the fact that her stepdad is it her step? Yeah, it's her stepdad is abusive. But then again, like Zach Galligan being super rich, it's one of those things that doesn't seem to be necessary, except for the fact that it gives reason why she would want to kill him in the eyes of the law. But yeah, it seems like they could just went on moving to the different levels without the whole trying to solve the murder mystery. And I don't know what kind of court would then allow that to happen anyways, of trying to let you prove reanimate corpses can come to life.
Yeah, I mean, the legal, yeah, we're getting way off track with that. You don't even want to try to think about the legal system in any reality. Yeah, I think the whole thing with the dad, the whole murder thing is just an excuse to do the Evil Dead 2 tribute, which is funny, which is what it is, but it's also, it feels like a movie this feels like a movie, at least speaking for me, is like something I would have written as a kid or something. In that, you don't need the murder. Like, there's all this stuff there's way too much shit. Way too much shit. It could be like so much more streamlined. It's all over the place. I think the movie references, again, are the best parts. Like, the Bruce Campbell sequence is clearly The Haunting. But it's actually, I mean, it's done well for what it is. It's like a great little tribute. And then there's a sequence that's basically like Alien with a much shittier looking alien. But you have fucking, what was this? I've seen this actor before. His name's Max something. But he's just fucking pissed already. There's like a doctor on the ship, and he's like, this fucking guy should know about these fucking aliens. It's just so, like, kind of melodramatic and, like, pulpy every sequence. I kind of can't help but love it because it's so ridiculous and, like, not well written, but, like, just so on the nose and B-movie-ish.
Speaking of legal action, I can't believe that with that blatant ripoff of Back to the Future at the end of it, that his ass did not get sued for that, because there's a difference between homaging Evil Dead 2 and blatantly ripping off Back to the Future, which is exactly what he did at the end, which it was just like, okay, fuck this movie and fuck this guy.
Well, I think it's the since it constitutes as a spoof or whatever, they're allowed to. There's that loophole where if you're spoofing something or satirizing something, you can kind of get away with it, I guess.
That's probably true, but at the same time, it's just, none of the other stuff was. I guess in terms of how blatant it is. I mean, obviously we know that he's just remaking Evil Dead 2 at the beginning, but it's not exactly the same. It's not, at the end, the guy fucking says the exact same line as Back to the Future. Like, you're just ripping that off. Like, there's no homage. You're literally, you just stole that. It's just like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, I have to agree with Josh on this one. Because obviously, like, Evil Dead 2, or like The Haunting is such a classic, and it switches to black and white, so you kind of know what he's doing there, where, yeah, Back to the Future was only a couple years earlier, and it is literally, here's the ending. And I love that fucking guy, too, also. That's like, that's my dream, to play that fucking part, where I'm just like, hey, by the way, we've been holding on this letter that's important to the plot for 100 years. Well, I guess I did my part. And he just walks out, and you're like, what the fuck? And then all the reporters are like, what are you going to do next? Where are you going to go? And she's like, I'm going to go join Mark. And everyone's like, who the fuck is Mark? End of movie.
I think Waxworks is one that they should try and do one of those long sequels for. That
Yes.
they're doing with all those 80s movies now, where they're kind of bringing it back and bringing the cast. I feel like free.
I'm in. I'll be in it. I'll be the guy with another letter that's like, oh yeah, this is a fan letter that I wrote. I'm really glad you guys made this movie. I've been waiting my whole life. It honestly, I think it does fall into that category though, where it's like interesting ideas. This could be, if someone wanted to do something with it, it is a good one to remake and much improve upon what's really there. It's a leave your brain at the door movie, really. I think it's so ridiculous, but it's fun to see those references to other movies. But yeah, especially with the Back to the Future 2 thing at the end, you do kind of realize, and I haven't seen a lot of Hickok's other movies, so I don't really know, but it does feel like he doesn't really have his own thing to do or say. You know what I mean? Like, he's referencing all these films that we probably love too, but then it's like, all right, dude, but what is your movie about? And he's like, I'm just going to steal from other people.
Well, Hickok's had the quadruple fucking gem run of Waxwork, then Sundown, then Waxwork 2, then Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, which was the beginning of the fucking end for poor Hellraiser sequels. So, yeah, I mean, I looked him up too, just to see, like, he's directed a ton of shit too, but it was like after Hellraiser 3, which I think was in like 90s, I don't even remember, but I didn't recognize the names of anything after that. So, I mean, it's kind of funny because those 4 films, literally, that was as good as it got.
Yeah, I was going to say, I looked him up as well, and it's pretty much after that, it's all straight to video Dolph Lundgren movies, Armand Asante movies, and then it just gets more obscure.
Since our part of this is to defend these, I will say with Waxworks 2, what I'll give it over Waxworks 1 is I think it knew like its tone a little bit better. Where Waxworks 1, there is kind of this issue, Josh brought it up, where like it's comedy in parts, but then there's also some of the anthology moments are played very seriously, but not like a horror comedy seriously, like trying to go for straight scares, where I think Waxworks 2, by that point, they knew what they were doing in terms of, tonally at least. So I'll give it that. Defending it.
Yeah, I mean, I can defend it too. I would totally agree. I think it's the more fun of the two because the first one does feel more like it's probably trying to be scary too. I mean, it's definitely funny and unintentionally funny a lot of the time. This one's leaning more into the horror and the comedy, and there's some more. Some of the set pieces are better since they're actually moving through time and going to like Frankenstein's mansion and all these different places. It feels a little bit like they got more bang for their buck. Um, I mean, if you like Zach Galligan yelling at the camera with wind blowing in his face and like a blue light, you're gonna like this movie, and I like that. I love that. Like she gets convicted to the fucking trial because what else would happen? You said a hand killed your stepdad, and then Zach Galligan like jumps up and he's like, "She's innocent. She didn't do it," and you're like, "Whoa, where's this coming from? What is that gonna do?" Also, by the way, it's a fucking court, buddy. I don't know. It's just so over the top and cheesy. I that's what you're getting in for is just cheese, and you just have to be ready for that, and then it's good.
I mean, I guess if I had to, the one thing that did stand out to me too that I thought about after the fact is, so it makes total sense why, the first film was called Waxwork. It doesn't make any sense at all that this movie is called Waxwork too, because there isn't any fucking waxwork in the movie at all. So I guess the point being is that at least they did something, totally different than, making a sequel, but basically you're just remaking the first movie. This is part two. So, at the very least, it's completely different. And the funny thing for me too is this movie, the part two, I felt like the beginning with the court shit is all just completely terrible. But then once they start, going back in time, I thought it was better than the first movie, but it does run into a problem where it gets so boring that it's literally like almost unwatchable. But for a certain amount of time, I felt like it was better than the first movie. And then it just, stopped. But I don't know. Valiant effort, I guess.
Yeah, I think once it gets going, it's more interesting. I think it's just those vignettes are the most interesting thing because it's like, oh shit, now we're fucking with Frankenstein. This is cool. This is like, what's this gonna be like? And jumping from those is the best. And then when they get to that castle and it kind of becomes a medieval thing, it goes on for a really long time. That was one thing I didn't remember in rewatching both of these. I was like, oh shit, both of these movies are like I think the first one's an hour and 40 minutes, and the second one is like an hour and 45. And I was like, oh man, okay. You guys could chop like 20 minutes out of both of these movies and it'd be fine.
Jesus Christ, yeah. When I saw that part two was an hour and 45 minutes, I was just like, you gotta be kidding me. There is no way this needs to be that long.
No.
So, if that's all we have for it, is that our last defense of Waxworks 2?
I would say it's all worth it for the Bruce Campbell cameo part and the end credits rap music video from the 90s about the movie is just the best thing ever. I've tried to find that song so I can make it my ringtone and I can't, but oh my god, I don't know. It's just, yeah, it is for me, it's one of the few that is I'm not really into so bad it's good, but this is so bad it's good. I don't know, for me.
Okay, well, that was our analysis of Waxworks 1 and 2 for Only a Mother Could Love. Apparently my dog wants to join as well, which... but thank you all for listening, and of course, check us out on any of our social media. Tell us your thoughts on Waxworks, if you liked it or not, and also if you have any movies that critics and fans of the horror genre seem to not really care too much for, but you love and you want us to try and watch and defend, like shoot it our way and we'll be happy to take it. So until next time, I'm Craig.
I'm Kyle.
And this is Josh. Later.
Have a good night.
Bloodhound Pix podcast is produced by Josh Lee, Craig Dram, and Kyle Hintz. Music by Raymond Seed. Audio editing by Kyle Hintz.